Hey there, it's Jordan with Status Coup. Hope you're having a decent afternoon on the East Coast, good morning on the West Coast, or wherever you're watching from. Got some breaking news in terms of the railroads. President Biden, let me give it a minute or two for people to trickle in before I start my whole spiel. Smash that like button, share this video. The more people that press like, the more people that will see this very live stream. We're also going to have a railroad worker on to react to the tentative deal. To be clear, despite the media premature victory lap that a deal has been struck, most workers, including the rail worker we're about to interview, don't know all the details yet. There's a lot of confusion. You're talking 12 different rail unions. So not all details are completely understood among the workers. And in my view, President Biden going out to speak about a half hour ago, basically declaring, a deal struck, crisis averted, is premature. As a reminder, there was a tentative agreement reached between the unions with John Deere and the company John Deere, and then the workers rejected it and went on strike. So this is not by any means a done deal. Before we bring on the guest, let me just give you and smash that like button, share this live stream. Colin, if you could send out the text. Let me just give you the overview of this agreement. This is from Lauren, who's with the Washington Post and does good labor reporting. Scoop. Jeff Stein and I have confirmed that railroads have agreed to give workers the ability to take days off for medical care without being subject to discipline. This was the key demand that railroad workers wanted to strike over, and they got it. Essentially, rail carriers were, in some cases, firing workers who took time off for medical needs. So rail carriers gave them the dignity of unpaid time off, it seems, if they have to go see a doctor or have medical needs. More details from this tentative agreement. Again, tentative. Workers will receive voluntary assigned days off and a single additional paid day off, meaning one additional paid day off. They previously did not receive sick days. And the agreement provides members with ability to take unpaid days for medical care without being subject to attendance policies. A big issue with this, really, it's been a 3-year ordeal where rail workers have been without a contract, has been this draconian attendance policy, which has made railroad workers essentially on call 24/7, which obviously is not sustainable or humane. Let me read from Dave Jameson. He's a labor reporter for HuffPost. And again, smash that like button, share this live stream. In about a minute or two, I'm going to bring on a rail worker to respond to this. Here is more of the details of this tentative agreement, which again, workers have not seen the agreement or had the ability to vote on it. The tentative agreement calls for an immediate wage increase of 14% once compounded, with an additional 4% on July 1st, 2023, and 4.5% on July 1st, 2024. In addition, wage increases of 3% effective July 1st, 2020, 3.5% effective July 1st, 2021, and 7% effective July 1st, 2022 will be fully retroactive for a compounded increase of 24% over the 5-year term of the agreement. The agreement also includes annual lump sum bonus payments totaling $5,000. That sounds great, but in my experience covering John Deere and others, it usually, if you look underneath the hood, it's not exactly what it seems. We'll get to that. The party's health and welfare plan point of service costs will remain unchanged. There will be no increase to copays and deductibles, and there are no disruptions to existing healthcare networks. In the last 20 hours of nonstop negotiations, our unions were able to reach an agreement that freezes our members' monthly healthcare contributions at the end of the agreement. no additional increases will apply to our monthly contributions while the parties bargain over the next national freight agreement. So that's just kind of some of the highlights. Let me bring in Gabe Christensen. You are a member of the International Association of Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Workers, SMART TD for short. So with the caveat that you and a whole lot of workers are kind of scrambling for more information, it's not like you're going to be able to react line by line because most workers have not even seen the agreement. What are your original preliminary thoughts? Because to me, unless I'm reading it wrong, it seems like this offer or this tentative agreement basically is what was offered before, only with you now won't be fired for seeing a doctor.
Right. And like you said earlier, I'm still trying to pick through just things I'm hearing on the internet about it. We haven't gotten the nuts and bolts of it yet. At first glance, when I looked at it, it does just seem like they reworded the PEB to an extent and added.
I just want to explain for the audience, because the terms PEB means the Presidential Emergency Board. So basically, I mean, not just Biden, presidents before him have appointed their own boards to kind of serve as middlemen between the railroad companies and the unions. So the PEB has been trying to broker a deal between the rail carriers and the unions and the workers, and their recommendations, the PEB's recommendations, in my opinion, were heavily skewed towards the rail carriers. But that's what you're talking about with the PEB.
Right. And I'm a bit skeptical too, because anytime you bring politicians and bureaucrats into our negotiating, there's devils in the details. I'm interested to see what if anything we gave up to get this stuff. One paid sick day, and I don't even know if it could be used as a sick day. It may just be one additional paid day off. And right now, I have vacation days, I have personal leave days, but unless you prearrange them, they don't let you use them. And where I work, there's 60 members, and they allow one prearranged day for that calendar day. So you may have 60 people fighting to get that one day. Not being fired for taking a day off to go to the doctor, I'd like to see how that's going to work. I mean, it's really, really early to tell, but you have to look historically. We used to be able to take a week off with no retribution from the company and everything. We worked a lot, but we had the ability to take a week off to go to the doctor, do whatever we needed to, and that was always unpaid as well. So over the last few years, they've been really tightening up on letting us take time off, and it's just in an effort to keep fewer people on the payroll to maximize their profits. You know what I mean? The wage increase, it sounds really good on paper, but what a lot of people don't know is we don't get a cost of living increase annually like most people do. The only time we make more money is when we do a contract negotiation. So with inflation, what it is, I mean, it's not even really keeping up. So I'm hopeful that the sick days off are what they look like on paper and everything. But until we get a written copy of what is actually in there, we can't know for sure if it's going to be what we want or not. There were some work rules that have been talked about that would have made our lifestyle even worse. We would have even known less when we were going to go to work. If that's going to get pushed through, I can tell you that the members where I am at are going to vote this TA down.
I wanted to just chip in. This is from another railroad worker I spoke with earlier, just on the pay increases, which on paper they sound very good. He said to me it amounts to a 2 to 7% pay cut when all factors are accounted for. The consumer price index, the cost of health insurance has already completely eaten up their $1,000 bonus, and inflation. He called it a lateral move.
Right. And that's basically what it is. I mean, what did they say the inflation rate was for August? 8.1%, I think they came out with, roughly. So when you factor all that in, I mean, it is basically a lateral move, if that. But I don't want to sound pessimistic on everything. Hopefully it's better than what it looks like. And I can only speak for myself. And if we did get one paid sick day, I mean, that's kind of a slap in the face, really. But the companies don't want to give any of that to us. You know, it's been a struggle, and we'll see where it takes us, you know.
Right. Colin, can we pull up this Jonah Furman tweet? I mean, obviously, this is all anecdotal. He's a good labor reporter with labor notes, but he just posted kind of reaction on Facebook with the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way employees to this. And why is our union posting this like this is some kind of game-changing deal? One day is laughable. We need to strike. The paying members didn't agree to this, and better pay was demanded also. No. We wanted paid sick leave days, not unpaid. Obviously, you got 12 unions. There's going to be a variety of difference of opinions. But I want to actually play President Biden's clip. I don't know if you saw it, but Biden came out, in my view, kind of a premature victory lap here. My guess is, the midterm elections are in a month and a half. He wanted to kind of put this out of the picture, kind of settle maybe the stock market, because obviously if a strike happens starting Friday, I mean, there would be massive ramifications for the economy. But he kind of declared this a victory and went on about how this is a symbol that workers deserve dignity. Let's take a look.
I want to thank the lead negotiators from the labor movement, the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers, the Trainmen, International Association of Sheet Metal and Air and Rail and Transportation Workers Union, and the other labor unions engaged. And this is a win for tens of thousands of rail workers and for their dignity and the dignity of their work. It's a recognition of that. During these early, dark, uncertain days of the pandemic, they showed up so every American could keep going. They worked tirelessly through the pandemic to ensure that families and communities got the deliveries they needed during these difficult few years. And because of the labor agreement, those rail workers will get better pay, a 24% wage increase over the next 5 years, improved working conditions, peace of mind around their health care by capping the cost that workers will have to pay. And it's about the right to go to a doctor or stay healthy and make sure you're able to have the care you can afford. It's all part of this agreement. And I want to thank the lead negotiators from the National Railway Labor Conference and our major rail companies. These companies also played a critical role in keeping America moving during the pandemic, and that's not hyperbole, it's a fact. With this agreement, railroad companies will be able to retain and recruit workers. They'll be able to continue to operate effectively as a vital piece of our economy. Today is a win, and I mean this sincerely, a win for America. So I want to thank you all for getting
All right, you get the gist. Besides the fact that he's going to look pretty stupid if this is voted down, I don't know. I kind of call me old-fashioned. That's pretty much crumbs if we're doing a victory lap and it's adding dignity to workers that we won't fire you if you go see a doctor, but we're also not going to pay you. By the way, Colin, if we have that more perfect union story I put in there, I just want to get into the profits of these companies. It's just astronomical.
They're massive.
In 2001, leading American freight carriers CSX, KC Southern, Norfolk Southern, and Union Pacific earned average operating margins of about 15%. That means that after accounting for all the costs associated with running a railroad, including money spent on compensation and benefits, for every $100 of revenue, investors were left with $15 of profit. 20 years later, that number has skyrocketed to over $41. During that same time period, the percentage of revenue spent on labor saw a sudden and drastic decline. In 2001, the four railroads spent about $8.7 billion on compensation and benefits to generate $25.6 billion. In 2021, the companies spent 10% more on labor, but brought in nearly double the amount of revenue. It's insane to think about, said Matt Russell, a popular investing commentator. And by the way, this was because they laid off a bunch of workers, which creates unsafe conditions.
Right.
Can you kind of talk about, I'm not trying to get too much into politics, but seems kind of wacky to me that Biden is, he's touting the numbers, 24% increase, yada, yada, yada. I still don't see a set schedule for workers. And I don't think it's so victorious. You should be paid if you need to see a doctor.
Right. And I'd just like to put out there too that my union, our unions, we're trying to bargain and negotiate in good faith. We started out asking for 15 paid sick days a year, which I don't think is too much to ask. A lot of other places have more. And then in bargaining in good faith, they just asked for 15 non-compensated days. And it seemed like the carriers weren't budging on anything. The political aspect of it, I've been asked quite a few times if we were worried about affecting the midterm elections or anything like that. And if we do, we do. We need our politicians to stand with blue-collar workers and union workers. They need to stand with labor. And if they're not, then let's affect the elections. We need to vote. We need to make sure that they stand with us. I don't know.
Hey, could you kind of explain, because we're getting into, the nitty-gritty of the agreement, which again has not been voted on by workers, so it could very well get struck down and there could still be a strike. Can you kind of get into, because a lot of people might not realize what goes into rail work. I mean, it's probably one of the most labor-intensive jobs you could have. Like we've been talking about, good luck having a set schedule, family time. Kind of give people a picture what you and your colleagues deal with kind of on a daily, weekly, yearly basis.
So we switch the cars out. We move the trains from point A to point B. This equipment doesn't just hurt you; it maims you or it kills you. There's very minimal proactive maintenance on equipment. It seems like so that even compounds the risk out there. You have people, I've been trying to explain to people, when you're on a board, which is a list and your name is on that list, as they call trains, your name moves up that list. And you can kind of look and sort of get like a roundabout idea of when you're going to work. So a lot of times you may go to sleep stay up all night and then try to sleep at 8 a.m. to try to go get rest because you're going to work all night. But then all of a sudden, with this new business model they have called PSR, they'll try to combine 2 trains into one to cut a crew off the train and cut manpower. So now you thought you were going to go to work at 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, and because they combined trains or something happened with a train en route, you're up all night long because you've slept all day. And then here the phone rings at 5 a.m. and then you go to work. So you may be up 20, 30 hours, even more from the time you woke up, and you're running this train through communities with hazardous material on it. Every time you go over a switch on a train, that's a flaw in the track, right? So there's a potential for derailment. you're working on very little rest, and you're trying to constantly monitor what's going on with your train, which is getting harder and harder, because where we used to have trains that were only 7,000 feet long, which used to be a decent sized train when you would get called for that. Now we have 15,000 foot long trains, which is almost 3 miles, just a hair under 3 miles. So there's a lot of variables that can happen with that, and working on little rest. And the thing people don't realize also is, if you look at hours worked by a railroad worker, that's actual time spent on a train. So once you get to where you're going and you go to your hotel room and you're waiting for your train to come back on, you may be there anywhere from a minimum of 12 hours to 40 hours sometimes. So that's not factored into any of our time spent protecting our jobs and things like that. So, and you're trying to get rest in a hotel, and it always seems like it's even harder to see when you're going to go to work with the train lineups that we have at our away from home terminals. So it's a guessing game. And even when you actually are off work at home, as you move up that board and you're getting closer to going to work, it's like Christmas night, I tell people every single time, like the anticipation. Did they combine this train? Did the guy ahead of me take a day off and I'm going to have to cover his position? So really, when you're trying to get your rest, most guys are sleeping in 2 and 3 hour increments, and then they wake up and they're like, oh man, I have to look at the computer. What's going on with that train I'm lined up for? So that's why the ability to take time off when we need to is so important to us, because we all know the less sleep you get, the weaker your immune system gets and the more susceptible you are to getting sick. So if you can't get adequate rest and you can't take a Wednesday off or something because you're just burned out because you've been doing it for 3 weeks, a month straight without, really a scheduled day off, that's what we're fighting for. That's what we're asking for. And we've had it in the past, and it's been taken away with this new business schedule or business idea that they've been pushing to maximize their profits, like you showed on that slide that we had.
And by the way, I should have added, since 2010, the railroad companies that are making these record profits, they've paid out $196 billion, almost $200 billion in stock buybacks and dividends to shareholders, while you guys are sleeping in 2 to 3 hour increments.
Right. And I'd like to also add that during the PEB, the railroad carriers put out a statement because the unions said our labor directly made record profits for these companies year after year. And the carrier coalition put out a statement saying that capital investment and risk on behalf of the company are the only reasons for profits. Labor did not contribute to any profits.
Well, clearly that's not true, because as of tomorrow, trains were going to be shut down.
Right. And we can all see what happened during the pandemic. And this is what I try to talk to my brothers and sisters in other unions and even non-union workers, that when everything was shut down from the pandemic, this country fell to its knees financially. We have power. We're needed. We are needed. So we all need to think about that.
Can I ask you a little bit about Warren Buffett, who obviously the media kind of slobbers over, one of the wealthiest people on earth. He is one of the predominant owners of the railroads in America. I don't know. Shouldn't he be speaking up if he's really this kind of patron saint that wants, rich people to pay more in taxes and all this? I don't see the media really covering Warren Buffett's role in all this.
No, I don't see that at all either. And I think it's a joke, because how much taxes does Berkshire Hathaway and BNSF actually pay on their profits?
Right.
I mean, he's using the loopholes just like everyone else, but he says it's not good, then lead by example.
Right. I mean, essentially, Obama, used Buffett in his campaign while he was president. Secretaries paying more in taxes than Warren Buffett, and Buffett came out, pushing for tax increases, but he owns some of the biggest rail companies on earth, and basically they seemed like they were willing to shut down the economy, not even like forget the wages for a second, to deprive you of basically unpaid sick time, not even paid sick time, to deprive you of unpaid sick time. I mean, that is pretty gross, and I think he's getting a major pass in the media and among politicians.
No, I agree 100%.
And he owns BNSF Railways parent company,
Right.
which is worth $100 billion.
Right.
Let me play Bernie Sanders, not surprisingly, spoke about this on the Senate floor. Let me play some of that.
The rail industry has seen huge profits in recent years, and last year alone made a record-breaking $20 billion in profit. Last year, the rail industry made $20 billion in profit. And let me also mention that the CEOs of many of these rail companies are enjoying huge compensation packages. For example, last year, the CEO of CSX made over $20 million in total compensation, while the CEOs of Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern made over $14 million each in total compensation. In other words, what's happening in the rail industry is what's happening all over this country. Corporate profits are soaring, and CEOs are making incredibly large compensation packages. I would also add that the parent company of BNSF, one of the largest freight rail companies in America, is Berkshire Hathaway, owned by Warren Buffett. Mr. Buffett is the fourth wealthiest man in America, worth nearly $100 billion. During the pandemic, as rail workers risked their lives to keep the economy going, Mr. Buffett became $33 billion richer. But, Mr. President, in the midst of all of those profit increases for the industry, in the midst of huge compensation packages for the CEOs of the industry, in the midst of increased wealth for those who own these companies, what's going on for the workers? I think that's a fair question to ask if we're in the midst of negotiations. What's going on for the workers? How are they doing? It turns out that the key issue in the current negotiations is not about salaries. Apparently, there is an agreement on that. The key issue that is being contested is about the working conditions in the industry, which are absolutely unacceptable and are almost beyond belief. Right now, if you work in the freight rail industry, one of the most grueling and dangerous jobs in America, you are entitled to a grand total of 0 sick days. In case you missed it, let me repeat it. You are entitled to 0 sick days. What that means is that if you as a worker get sick, if your child gets sick, if your spouse gets sick, and you need to take time off of work, not only will you not get paid, you actually could get fired. And that is precisely what is happening today in the rail industry. How crazy is that?
And I just want to add, because obviously I've been pointing out that Biden gave a premature victory lap in his speech. We should also point out that as of yesterday, the Republican Party was trying to essentially force the railroad workers to accept this tentative agreement. before it was even completely agreed to. And they were basically trying to block them from being able to strike. So I don't really want to hear any more about, right-wing populism. The Republicans in the Senate were trying to force workers like Gabe to accept whatever deal was given to them and prevent them from going on strike. But your thoughts, obviously you would expect to hear those kind of things from Bernie, but it kind of lays out just the sheer imbalance here in terms of the profit and what they're fighting to deprive you of.
Right. And I'd also like to put out that leading up to the end of our negotiations, BNSF had put out that they were embargoing hazardous material shipments, intermodal shipments, and things like that. And I saw somewhere on the internet, I can't say if it's true or not, I had somebody text it to me, that they were asking their shippers to call Congress and tell them to force us to work and not. So whether that's true or not, but I had multiple people send me a text link that they were sending out to customers to write a generic letter to Congress, I believe. The other thing too that I didn't even think about talking about is actually everybody may think we're just sitting on a train, going down the tracks and everything, but we're constantly having to go back. If a car, we may see sparks behind our train, we have to go inspect it, see if it's safe to move the car and things like that. And that's not during the day in 70-degree weather. I mean, I've had to walk trains through a blizzard because we couldn't see the signals because they were covered in snow. So I had to walk ahead of the train, waist deep in snow for miles, trying to get it safely down a hill, things like that. My members were out here working in 110-degree weather. With the increase of climate change and the increase of fires everywhere, we fight our own fires on the railroad. We spray water down along the tracks. So we're putting all kinds of these situations out here that people don't realize that we do. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There is no holidays. There is no, unless you're lucky enough to get a day off, you're missing your friend's wedding, you're missing your kid's baseball game, you're missing your kids' softball games. I mean, birthdays. We're out there working. We're away from home or we're on a train. And I don't think a lot of the public realizes that,
Right. And can you kind of talk about, not to get too personal, but for you personally, I don't know if you have kids, but it's got to be incredibly hard if your kids, can we go here, tomorrow, and you don't really know how to answer it because you don't know if you're going to have to work.
Right. I do have 3 kids, a 10-year-old, 14-year-old, and a 19-year-old. And the really tough thing is when you don't have that much seniority out here, there's an ebb and flow in traffic depending on seasonal shipping and things like that. So they cut and add jobs. So if you don't have seniority to work a job where you live, either you don't work or you have to go somewhere else that you can work a job with the seniority that you have. So that's all on our own dime. The companies don't pay us to drive. At one point I was working 350, 360 miles away from where I live. And my 14-year-old daughter, when she was born, the first 6 years she was alive, I was working 178 miles away from where I lived. And I was on a job to where I was able to come home only 5 days a month. So for the first 6 years of my daughter's life, unless I had vacation, was on my vacation days, I only saw her 5 days a month. And that was pretty tough.
Yeah. Before I let you go, obviously I'm not going to ask you to predict anything because you haven't even seen the tentative agreement, but you got 12 unions here. How do you think this plays out? I don't, obviously you can't predict whether it'll be voted yes or no, but I just think, just watching cable news, they're basically declaring it over. They didn't even give the caveats that workers have to vote on this. Colin, if you have this tweet from Ross Gruters, I think this kind of perfectly encapsulated it. It's baffling how many pundits and politicos want to weigh in on the railroad deal before the rank and file have been able to see the details and decide if it's even acceptable. So that was one railroad worker. But how do you see this playing out?
I think a lot of the main media is kind of making it a wage thing. But like you guys have said, it's a quality of life thing. So what I think it's going to hinge on ultimately is what it looks like with these uncompensated sick days that they're offering and the voluntary days off. I believe I'm hearing that it's only 2 voluntary days off, but like I said, I can't say whether that's for sure or not, but it's going to hinge on the ability to take care of ourselves and our families. And that's what a lot of, the members of my union are talking about. That's our major issue. I can tell you right now, just for me, if they got rid of the attendance policy we have, it would be a lot easier to get this agreement signed if we went back to how it was 5-6 years ago, when we had more of an ability to take the time off, and it wasn't compensated back then. But I do feel like we deserve compensated sick time, like the majority of other industries have,
Right.
So really quality of life stuff is what it's going to hinge on. That'll make or break the deal on what people think of the amount that's being offered.
Thanks, Ben. I appreciate it. Gabe Christensen with International Association of Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Workers. Let's stay in touch.
Okay, and I'd just like to put it out there too, if anybody's interested on struggles we have in the railroad or any kind of information regarding agreements or anything like that, they can always go to Railroad Workers United. I'm a co-chair with Railroad Workers United as well, so we're constantly putting information out there. So if you guys are looking for anything, that'd be the place to go.
Absolutely. Take care.
All right, thanks. Bye.
And don't go anywhere. We're not done. We got 220 people watching. Smash that like button. Share this live stream. A reminder, 7 o'clock Eastern tonight. 7 o'clock Eastern tonight, 4 o'clock Pacific, our monthly members call through Zoom. So if you are a Status Coup member, you know the drill. You'll get the email to join us on the members call tonight. It's a lot of fun. It's through Zoom. You don't have to be on camera. You could just listen. But I answer your questions, comments, concerns. 7 o'clock Eastern tonight. We usually go about an hour or two with our members. Membership is how we fund this whole thing. If you haven't noticed, we're the only independent outlet that I know of that actually leaves the studio and covers stories on the ground that the corporate media covers up. I got to tell you, part of me wanted there to be a strike because I'd love to go out and cover tens of thousands of workers on strike against these greedy assholes. And there might still be a strike because, by the way, this tentative agreement can get voted down by the workers. For those that were watching our coverage in October with the John Deere strikes, there was a tentative agreement where the union bosses agreed to a deal with John Deere and the workers voted it down. Because there's always seems to be a very, very big gap between the union heads and the rank and file workers. So it's still possible that this will be voted down. I'm not a railroad worker, so I don't want to speak for them whether they should vote it down. But I mean, the devil's in the details. From what I could tell, reading what's in this tentative agreement, it seems like most of it seems to be the same as what Biden's presidential board had already recommended that the workers were saying no to. The only difference being that we're not going to now the railroad carriers will grant you the dignity. Yeah, you won't be fired if you need to see a doctor, but we're also not going to pay you if you need to take time off for a doctor or whatever. That ain't good enough, if you ask me. And as we can tell, the workers have the leverage. Biden's White House was melting down at the thought of a railroad strike because it would shut down the economy. I mean, if the trains don't run, you don't even know how many important things are transported on rails, including life-saving things, products, including chemicals and whatnot for our water and wastewater systems around the country. So the workers have the leverage here, and I hope they use it. And I really appreciate Gabe coming on. If you're a railroad worker and you want to talk and you have a story, email us at info@statuscoup.com, info@statuscoup.com. But you want to know something? $149 billion over 10 years in stock buybacks and dividends. They could afford to pay workers if they need to go see a doctor, pay workers if they need time off. You might even have more profits if you have healthy workers. You see how that works? And this is, to me, bigger than just the railroad industry. This is part of the fight back. Workers finally fighting back. We've seen it with the Starbucks workers, Amazon workers, Trader Joe's, Frito-Lay, Nabisco, the coal miners who have been on strike for over a year down in Alabama, Verizon workers, Apple workers. I mean, the list goes on and on. Workers need to fight back. The Democrats aren't coming to save you. Republicans certainly aren't coming to save you. None of them are going to do anything. And by the way, Biden, he's not coming to save you. And Colin, while we at it, for people that came late, let's replay Biden's premature victory lap, because he went out in front of the cameras to basically, I think, soothe the stock market and prevent a full-on panic, because if there was a strike, the economy would crater, and obviously he doesn't want that, because the main thing on his mind is the midterm elections. Let's play Biden's speech again.
I want to thank the lead negotiators from the labor movement, the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and the Trainmen, International Association of Sheet Metal and Air and Rail and Transportation Workers Union, and the other labor unions engaged. And this is a win for tens of thousands of rail workers and for their dignity and the dignity of their work. It's a recognition of that. During these early, dark, uncertain days of the pandemic, they showed up so every American could keep going. They worked tirelessly through the pandemic to ensure that families and communities got the deliveries they needed during these difficult few years. And because of the labor agreement, those rail workers will get better pay, a 24% wage increase over the next 5 years, improved working conditions, peace of mind around their health care by capping the cost that workers will have to pay. And it's about the right to go to a doctor or stay healthy and make sure you're able to have the care you can afford. It's all part of this agreement. And I want to thank the lead negotiators from the National Railway Labor Conference and our major rail companies. These companies also played a critical role in keeping America moving during the pandemic, and that's not hyperbole, it's a fact. With this agreement, railroad companies will be able to retain and recruit workers. They'll be able to continue to operate effectively as a vital piece of our economy. Today is a win, and I mean this sincerely, a win for America. So I want to thank you all for getting this done, both business and labor. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and may God protect our troops. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Unmute yourself, Jordan.
A win for America. Dignity for our workers. Let me know in the chat. Do you feel this is a victory for dignity for workers? That we are just giving you the dignity that we won't fire you if you need to see a doctor? We're not going to pay you if you need to see a doctor. That's a little too much dignity. But, we'll no longer fire you if you have a medical issue. This is what restoring the soul of America means. This is what Union Man Joe. I mean, Joe Biden could have been proactive. He could have got out in front of the cameras during the impasse and demanded that these rail carriers who are making billions of dollars in profit provide paid sick leave. provide pay increases that are on measure with inflation and the consumer price index. So this is basically how neoliberalism and corporate media gaslighting works. They created a character, which is Joe Biden, over the last 20 years. Let's just look at the last 2 or 3 years of union man, that he's a working class Joe, that he's blue collar, scrappy from Scranton. He understands the plight of workers. He helped push NAFTA, which decimated unions. He's been for every trade deal that has decimated unions. In 2016, while Hillary Clinton was reversing herself on the TPP because it was very unpopular, even though she was actually for the TPP trade deal, Biden was pushing Hillary Clinton when Hillary was the presidential candidate to embrace the TPP because the Obama administration embraced the TPP. The TPP trade deal would have been the final nail in the coffin to organize labor. He took God knows how much money from union busting companies like Comcast. By the way, Comcast, the owner of NBC and MSNBC, a vice president at Comcast through Biden's first big fundraiser in his 2020 campaign. What a union guy. I mean, it's absurd. It's absurd. I mean, when I worked at Fox or MSNBC or some other, if I had to go to a doctor, like they weren't like, you got to clock out, you're not getting paid for that. I would say most salary jobs, if you have a doctor's appointment or something like that, or you get a couple sick days, it's not enough. But these rail workers, I mean, you heard from Gabe, they're basically working, 2 to 3 hour sleep schedules here, never knowing when they have to work again. Working 40 hours straight. And he wants to talk about dignity for these workers because, well, we got the greedy CEOs. We got the greedy CEOs to agree, we'll let you take unpaid time off. And oh, by the way, Warren Buffett owns half the railroad industry. We're not going to say anything. The media is not going to cover Warren Buffett being a greedy scoundrel because, he takes his grandkids to McDonald's and he gives away all his wealth. Give me a break. Or shall I say,
come on, man. Come on, man. Come on, man. Come on.
But I have to say we're capitalist. And that's just the way it is. But
greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed.
Sorry, had to throw all those in. Let's show this. This is from Jonah Furman with labor notes. He's usually pretty spot on, great labor reporter. I'm not doing any predictions, but members were ready to reject the Presidential Emergency Board by 80%. He's referring to the recommendations that were made by President Biden's emergency board. Those recommendations were basically like almost 90% tilted towards what the rail CEOs wanted. The only new thing here is some unpaid sick time. That was very much a compromise demand in the last days of this thing. If that's all of the improvement there is on the Presidential Emergency Board, I don't see it passing. So again, this has to be voted on by the rail workers. And Jonah is, predicting, and he's hearing from rail workers that they will vote this down. What that means is we might be here again in a week, in 2 weeks, and a strike happens even closer to the midterms, and Biden's going to look like a moron for coming out there and doing a premature victory lap. To be clear, on a broader scale, we do not have federal paid sick leave in this country because President Manchin blocked it as part of the Build Back Better deal. So we don't have a uniform paid sick leave deal. Union man Joe Biden, who says he's a union man, has he ever done anything to demand that Amazon provide paid sick leave for its workers? Of course not. And by the way, an update on that, we now have a warehouse in Missouri. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. I always get it wrong. Missouri. That is now filing for a union with Amazon. So we have obviously Staten Island, which was victorious. Amazon in Albany will be voting soon for a union. You have a North Carolina Amazon that's attempting to unionize, one in Kentucky, and now in Missouri. So there is momentum. There is momentum. But I hope they strike. I really do. Because frankly, even the pay increases, which Biden and the rail carriers are trying to sell as 24% increase, when you look at inflation, the consumer price index, the amount of money they've had to pay for their health care, it's actually a pay cut. It's actually a pay cut. Let me read some super chats. Reminder. What are we? 1 o'clock, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In less than 6 hours, we will have our monthly members call. So I hope to see more people signing up as a Status Coup member. StatusCoup.com/join. If you sign up before the 7 o'clock Eastern members call, you'll get an email with the link. It's on Zoom. It's always a lot of fun. We go for an hour or two. Really would love to see new members sign up so we could get you in the Zoom call tonight. We do it every month. Colin and I will be on and we'll be talking to you. StatusCoup.com/join. If you've noticed, we have been covering the Jackson, Mississippi water crisis, which is still ongoing, and the media has basically abandoned the story after they covered it for 5 minutes. We've been covering a major water problem in New York City at the Jacob Riis housing complex. Shockingly, mostly poor Black and Hispanic people live there. They were found to have arsenic in their water. But Mayor Eric Adams recently came out saying, "Oh, just kidding. And it was actually the testing lab made an error." So John Farina has been covering that for us over there. We're going to cover a strike if and when it happens. We got other stories in the works to cover on the ground. Money don't grow on trees. We don't have any funding from the big banks, the fossil fuckers, big pharma, big real estate, Silicon Valley, the military industrial complex. Our funding comes from you, the viewer. So if you can support us, statuscoup.com/join. I hope to see you on the members call tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern. Let me read some super chats. Paul, $1.99. Who even needs a day off anyways? Smiley face, right? IYKYK. $4.99. Shout out to Status Coup doing the real work. Thank you. D Nord, $20. This is excellent. Needs to be juxtaposed compared to mainstream media's reporting. Expose their twist. Well, the mainstream media's reporting was basically Biden saved the day. A catastrophe, meaning a strike, has been averted, and now we can move on to our who's up, who's down, how's it looking for the midterms. We don't really need to talk about what's in the deal. We don't really need to interview railroad workers on CNN or MSNBC about their exploitation. We don't need to do that. So that's basically what you're going to see on mainstream media. Status Coup, you're actually going to see the truth, which is this is the economic Hunger Games, and Warren Buffett and other railroad companies are basically, willingly killing these workers, because it's slow, but they're killing these workers. If you have to work 30, 40 straight hours, manual labor that is very dangerous, that's not good for your health, mental or physical. All right. So I think I hit everything I wanted to hit. Obviously, if there's updates, we'll provide those to you. 5 o'clock Eastern, Ron Placone and Tina Desiree Berg will be co-hosting the live stream at 5 o'clock Eastern. So come back for that. I'm sure they'll be talking about the railroad strike, a potential strike, as well as other topics. So Ron and Tina are on at 5 o'clock Eastern. After that, at 6 o'clock Eastern is Right-Wing Insanity Report. The Right-Wing Insanity Report, which is awesome. Tina's been doing an amazing job bringing you that. It's kind of a mix of humor, kind of mocking the latest insanity and cringe with Republicans, and also very serious stuff, because obviously there is an explosion in violence happening that I believe is sparked by Republicans, as well as white supremacy. So Tina does a great job of mixing both of those. So 5 o'clock, Ron and Tina. 6 o'clock, Tina's Right-Wing Insanity Report, and 7 o'clock, our members call. So big day at Status Coup. I hope more people will sign up as a member so we can get you over to our members call tonight. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. All right. Oh, we did get a new member. Sabrina signed up as a new Status Coup member. So welcome, Sabrina. 200 people watching. I am sure of the 200 people watching, some of you are not Status Coup members. If it is within your means, if it's not, we understand. If it is within your means, sign up, statuscoup.com/join. You could become a member for as low as $5 a month. That's 16 cents a day. And it goes to on-the-ground investigative reporting. Thank you for watching. We'll see you back here at 5 o'clock Eastern time. Take care.